Carl Jung discovered something profound that most people will never understand. He called it Sophia, the ultimate expression of inner wisdom. In his work on the Jung identified four levels of development: Eve the biological, Helen the romantic, Mary the spiritual, and finally Sophia representing wisdom itself. While Jung wrote about this, primarily in terms of the masculine psyche's relationship to the feminine, the qualities of Sophia can manifest in anyone who completes the individuation process. If you're watching this video, there's a good chance you're already feeling the shift. Maybe you've noticed that the things that used to excite you don't move you anymore. Maybe success feels empty. You're tired of pretending to care about things that simply don't matter. That's not depression. That's not you giving up on life or losing your way. That's the first whisper of wisdom, trying to wake you up. Today, I'm going to show you the 8 signs that these Sophia level qualities have awakened within you. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why Jung believed this stage is both the loneliest and the most powerful place a human being can reach. Consider a case pattern that Jung documented, representing dynamics he observed repeatedly. A woman came to him feeling disconnected from her old life. She had the career, the family, the success. But something inside her had shifted. She told Jung she felt like she was watching her own life from the outside, like an observer who no longer belonged to the story. Jung recognized this immediately as a hallmark of deep psychological transformation. She wasn't broken. She was waking up to a wisdom that transcended her previous way of being and that scared everyone around her. Because when you reach this stage, you stop playing the games that hold society together. You stop pretending. You stop performing. And that makes you dangerous to a world built on illusions. Let's talk about the first sign, the transcendence of the hero archetype. This is where your drive to conquer, to prove yourself, to be the main character, finally quiets. In his writings, Jung observed that the hero stage is for the morning of life. It's when you're young and hungry. You want to achieve things, build things, prove to the world that you matter. But deep wisdom belongs to the afternoon of life. In the afternoon, realize something profound. You don't need to be the hero anymore. You become the observer, the witness, the one who watches without needing to control. Think about it. When was the last time you felt that burning need to prove yourself? If that fire has gone out, you might think something's wrong with you. But Jung would say, you're evolving. You're moving from doing to being, from conquering to understanding. This shift terrifies people around you because we live in a world that worships the hero. We're told to hustle, to grind, to never stop chasing. But you've stopped chasing. Not because you're lazy, not because you've given up, but because you've realized that the race was never real to begin with. The second sign is that you perceive wisdom, not just knowledge. There's a shift that happens at this level. You stop collecting information and start feeling truth. Jung identified a pattern he described as the move from logos to Sophia, from intellect to deep wisdom. Logos is masculine, analytical, concerned with facts and logic. Sophia is feminine, intuitive, concerned with meaning and connection. This isn't about gender, it's about modes of knowing. And what happens in this stage is that you stop reading books to find answers and start looking inward. You realize that all the knowledge in the world can't teach you what silence can, what stillness can, what simply being present can teach you. A library of books can tell you about love, but only your heart can teach you what love actually is. 1,000 philosophies can describe enlightenment, but only your direct experience can show you what it means. This is why you might feel bored by conversations that used to excite you. Someone talks about their latest achievement, a new business idea, their plans to change the world, and you just smile and nod, not because you're judging them, but because you can see what they can't see yet, that all of it is just noise. All of it is just the ego trying to prove it exists. You've moved beyond that. You don't need to prove anything anymore, you just know. And that knowing doesn't come from your head. It comes from somewhere deeper, somewhere quiet, somewhere most people are too afraid to visit. Now we come to the third sign. And this one confuses people the most. A state of emotional detachment that resembles what mystics call holy indifference, or what Jung described as disidentification from the ego's dramas. But this isn't numbness. Isn't you becoming cold or heartless. This is the ability to care deeply without being destroyed by outcomes. Things that used to trigger you now just pass through you like clouds across the sky. Someone insults you and you feel it, but it doesn't hook you. Someone betrays you and you see it clearly, but it doesn't shatter you. You've developed what Jung described as psychological immunity. You can be in the storm without becoming the storm. You can witness suffering without drowning in it. This is the stage where people start calling you cold. Say, don't care anymore. They say you've changed, and they're right. You have changed, but not in the way they think. You haven't stopped caring. You've just stopped letting other people's chaos become your chaos. You've stopped taking responsibility for emotions that don't belong to you. And that makes you very difficult to manipulate, very difficult to control, and that scares people who are used to controlling you. The fourth sign is radical acceptance of the shadow. You no longer judge others because you see the same capacity for darkness in yourself. You stop projecting. Empaths aren't broken, they're alchemists in progress. The alchemist's path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity by Surreal Mind. 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com. This is huge. Most people spend their entire lives pointing fingers at everyone else. They see evil out there. They see cruelty out there. They see manipulation out there. But at this level of wisdom, you realize something that changes everything. You are capable of all of it. Every dark thing you see in another person exists in you too. You have the capacity for cruelty, for selfishness, for betrayal, for destruction. The difference is you've looked at it, you've acknowledged it, you've integrated it. Jung observed that shadow integration is perhaps the most challenging work a person can do. It means sitting with the parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime running from. It means admitting that yes, you could hurt someone. Yes, you could lie. Yes, you could abandon someone you love if you were scared enough or hurt enough. And because you've done that work, because you've stopped denying your own darkness. You stop being shocked by human behavior. You stop being outraged by what people do. You just see it clearly. You see a person acting from their wounds, their fears, their unhealed parts, and instead of judging them, you just witness them. This doesn't mean you accept abuse. This doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It means you see clearly without the distortion of projection. And that clarity gives you a kind of power that most people will never understand. You become impossible to manipulate through guilt or shame because you've already looked at your worst parts and made peace with them. The fifth sign is what Jung specifically called the transcendent function, the ability to hold paradox. You can hold two opposing truths at once without your mind breaking. You understand that someone can be good and bad, that life is both tragic and beautiful, that you can love someone and still need to walk away from them. Most people can't do this. Most people need everything to be black or white, good or evil, right or wrong. But you've moved beyond that. You've entered the realm of, and instead of awe, you can see that your parent was both loving and harmful, that your ex was both kind and cruel, that you yourself are both light and shadow. Jung described the transcendent function as the ability to hold tension between opposites without collapsing into one side or the other. It's not just
paradox. It's the capacity to synthesize opposites into something new.
It's the mark of a truly mature psyche. And it's rare, so rare that when people encounter you, they often feel confused. They try to put you in a box, they try to label you, but you don't fit. You can't be pinned down because you've learned to live in the space between opposites. And that space is where all real wisdom lives. Now, before we continue with the remaining signs, I need to pause and tell you something important, a truth that Jung tried to warn us about. This level of development comes with a price, and that price is loneliness, not the lonely feeling you get when you're by yourself, but the loneliness of seeing things that others can't see, of knowing things that others aren't ready to know. In his writings, Jung extensively documented this phenomenon. He observed that people who reach this level of psychological maturity often feel like they're living in a different reality from everyone around them. In a way, they are. Just once you wake up to this level, you can't go back. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you know. And here's why society rejects people at this stage. Because you can't be controlled anymore. You don't respond to the usual tricks. You don't fall for the usual manipulations. You don't chase the carrots that keep everyone else running on the wheel. And that makes you dangerous. Not dangerous in a violent way, but dangerous to systems that depend on people staying ASL. So if you're feeling this loneliness, if you're feeling like nobody understands you anymore, that's not a sign that something's wrong. That's a sign that you're exactly where you need to be. You're in the solitude that comes before true authenticity. Let's continue. With the sixth sign, the shift from doing to being. You stop forcing things. You stop trying to make life happen. You will adopt what the ancient Chinese philosophers called wei effortless action. This is where you stop living from your will and start living from something deeper. You stop asking what should I do and start asking what wants to happen through me. You become a channel rather than a controller. Think about water. Water doesn't fight with the rock. It doesn't try to force its way through. It simply flows. And over time, the water shapes the rock. That's you now. You're not fighting anymore. You're not struggling anymore. You're flowing. And that flow has more power than all your previous efforts combined. Jung observed this pattern in individuals who had reached psychological maturity. They stopped efforting and started allowing. They trusted the intelligence of the unconscious to guide them. They learned to wait for the right moment rather than forcing the wrong moment. This is the hardest sign for people to understand because we live in a culture of force. We're told to make it happen, to take action, to hustle harder. But you've discovered that the most powerful action is surrender, not giving up, not being passive, but aligning yourself with the deeper current of life and letting it move you. When you live this way, things start happening that you couldn't have planned. Opportunities appear, opal, show up, doors open, not because you're forcing them, but because you've stopped blocking the natural flow. You've become like a river that knows exactly where it's going, even though it never tries to get there. The seventh sign is perception of what Jung explored as the anima mundi, the world soul. You start seeing the divine in the ordinary. Nature, animals, simple moments feel profound. This is where life becomes sacred again. Not in a religious way necessarily, but in the sense that you feel connected to everything. You look at a tree, and you don't just see a tree. You see the intelligence that grew it, the pattern that shaped it, the same pattern that's shaping you. You watch an animal and you feel its consciousness. You feel the life force moving through it. You realize that the same life force is moving through you. Everything becomes alive. Everything becomes meaningful. Jung explored this concept in his later work, suggesting that consciousness pervades all of reality. And when you reach this level of wisdom, you start perceiving it directly. You feel the aliveness in a stone. You sense the wisdom in a bird's flight. You understand that the sunset isn't just physics. It's a poetry written by the universe. This perception changes how you move through the world completely. You become gentler, more reverent. You can't carelessly destroy something when you can feel its consciousness. You can't treat life as disposable when you sense the sacred in everything. This is why people at this stage often become quieter. They talk less. They don't need to fill every silence with words because they're listening. They're feeling, they're communing with something that words see and capture. The eighth and final sign is the return to simplicity. After gaining all this complexity, all this understanding, all this wisdom, you return to simple living. Chopping wood, carrying water, as the old Zen saying goes. You embody what Jung might recognize as the sage archetype. Realize that all the complexity was just a journey back to simplicity, but it's not the same simplicity you had before. Before you were simple because you didn't know better. Now you're simple because you've been through the complexity. You've traveled through the dark forest and returned to the village. But you're not the same person who left. You've seen things, you've learned, broken, and remade, and now you're content with the basics. A cup of tea, a quiet morning, a walk in nature, a conversation with someone who gets it. More, not because you can't have more, but because you've realized that more doesn't add anything. It just clutters, it just distracts. It just pulls you away from the only thing that matters, which is being present to this moment, right here, right now. This is the stage where you become genuinely free from consumer culture, because you can't be sold to anymore. You can't be convinced that you need the next thing to be happy. You found the happiness that doesn't depend on things, and that's the ultimate freedom. But Jung had a critical warning about this stage, and this warning is essential. He described a phenomenon he called inflation, the danger of identifying with archetypal energy and believing you've become more than human. This is the trap that catches many seekers. They reach this level and start thinking they special. They start thinking they're better than others. They start thinking they have all the answers. And the moment you think that, you've fallen, you've missed the whole point. Jung, very clear about this. Deep wisdom isn't about superiority, it's about humility before mystery. It's about realizing that the more you understand, the more you see how much you don't understand. The wise person doesn't walk around acting wise. They walk around knowing they're just a human being who's been given a glimpse of something larger. Because you realize that everyone on their own journey, everyone is at their own stage, and your job isn't to drag them to where you are. Your job is to be where you are fully, and let that be an invitation for others when they're ready. So what's your responsibility if you've reached this level? Your job isn't to leave the world. Your job is to come back, to return as someone who's been to the underworld and survived, someone who's faced their shadow, someone who's died to their old self and been reborn. The world needs you. Not the old you, but this you. The you that's been through the fire. The you that can hold space for others without judgment. The you that can see clearly without cruelty. The you that can love deeply. Coming back doesn't mean going back to your old life and pretending nothing changed. It means bringing what you've learned into the world in ways that serve. Maybe that's through maybe it's through your relationships, maybe it's simply through your presence. Jung observed that individuated people have a quality about them that affects others without them having to do anything. They become what he described as a bridge between conscious and unconscious. They help others wake up simply by being awake themselves. This is what Jung meant when he talked about individuation. It's not a selfish process. It's not about becoming special or separate. It's about becoming whole so that you can give from wholeness instead of giving from wounds. It's about healing yourself so deeply that your very presence becomes healing for others. Let me reframe something for you. That loneliness you've been feeling, that disconnection, that sense that you don't fit anywhere anymore, That's not a problem. That's your initiation into what Jung described as the profound solitude of the individuated person. You have entered a rare territory of psychological maturity. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you've done the work that most people are too afraid to do. You've looked at your shadow, you've faced your demons, you've questioned everything you were taught to believe, you've walked through the fire of your own transformation, and you've come out the other side. That makes you an elder in the truest sense. Even if you're young in years, you're old in soul. And the world desperately needs elders. We need people who can see clearly, who can hold space, who can speak truth without agenda, who can love without attachment, who can guide without controlling. That's you.